On this episode, we speak about the thirst for validation. There is a fine line between accepting a compliment and needing one to feel good about yourself. When we understand just who we are, the craving for external affirmation fades. Tune in as we discuss validation and tips and tools on establishing a healthy sense of approval, right here on LifeClub.
I'm Tashima Jones. Welcome to LifeClub. I genuinely believe personal development unlocks the door to the abundant and wonderful life we all already have. I also believe we must be intentional about seeking out that life in order to find and fulfill it. I am so grateful your journey of discovery has led you all the way here. Let's keep moving forward together. Once again, welcome to LifeClub with me, Tashima Jones. Welcome. Happy 2020, my beautiful people. Super excited as always to be here, right here, rocking with you on LifeClub with me, Tashima Jones. So today we are speaking about validation. Yes. So really quickly, I have had trouble with this area of my life in times past. I was seeking validation both consciously and unconsciously. It may have been a thirst for, and let me repeat, a thirst for the approval of my peers, family, or my mates. Whether on the job or in school, there was this constant desire to be accepted, to be liked, to be hashtag validated. And like so many of my breakthroughs, revelations, and aha moments, if you will, it wasn't until recently I was able to fully recover and overcome this insane and some would say crippling need for validation. The official definition of validation is this. It is the action of checking or proving the validity or accuracy of something. It also means the action of making or declaring something, or in this case, someone officially acceptable. And lastly, it is the recognition or affirmation that a person or their feelings or opinions are valid and worthwhile. Now, to be valid is to be strong, having legal efficacy or force. To be valid is also to be well-grounded or justifiable. You always know we got to start with the definition of a thing because when we do, we know how to use it properly. So when we speak about validation and we speak about being valid, it is this sense of firmness. It is this sense of being grounded, and it is this sense of being truth and standing in a space of truth. And the odd thing about validation from others is that the thirst is never quenched. It is a constant nagging desire to be approved. The reason why validation is not fulfilled from other people is because it's not from an outside acknowledgement. It is truly a hashtag inside job. It is the work of self-discovery, conversations with the life force, and a journey of personal development. And in this installment of LifeClub, this very installment of LifeClub is part of that journey. So in order for us to dig in, we must first dust things off. We have to understand that this idea of discovering something is not this concept of you gaining a thing, but it's this concept of realizing that that thing is already on the inside of you and you must uncover it. It is veiled, it is hidden, and you must do the life work of realizing it and recognizing it and understanding that that thing, that it already exists on the inside of you. So a few of the things that we have to dust off when it comes to this concept of validation is the opinion of others. Remember, to be valid is to be a thing of truth, a thing of authenticity, a thing of accuracy. And when we understand that other people's opinions are just that, they are coming from another person and their experiences and their perspective of you based on what they have gone through, that is always never going to add up when you really think about seeking validation from another person. Now, this, I truly believe that there is a difference between desiring validation from a parent or someone that you look up to versus your friends and your peers. But in all reality, the truth remains the same, that validation comes from the inside of you. Validation truly comes from the life force. And oftentimes I find it difficult to be able to express these things because we are talking about the unseen and getting outside of this five sensory realm. But I truly believe that there is a level of truth and faith that exists in each and every one of us. And there is this measure of truth that we tend to tap into when we hear truth. So I'm just going to really believe that those who have ears to hear what I am speaking about. Once again, we are speaking about validation. And one of the things that we have to dust off is the opinions of others. And when you think about being valid, when you think about being authentic, who on earth can really approve that in you? Let's just take a deep breath on that. Who can really say that you are worthy? Who can really say that you are valid other than you and the life force, other than you and then the one that created you? The danger in taking other people's opinions as your truth is that their eyesight, their viewpoint, their perspective is so limited. Again, not only limited to their experiences, but they do not fully know you, the you that has gone through some things, the you who has overcome some things, and the you who is moving forward to and through some things. So when we look for validation on the outside of us, we have to understand that we will never, ever find it. Now, you can take the person who seeks validation and once they get that approval, they never receive it. It's never good enough. They just need more and more people to validate them, or the same person to validate them for the next 6 months in order for them to really receive it. Again, the reason why validation from the outside is never fully received, it's because it can never truly validate you. No one else's opinion or perspective of you, whether it's true or not, will ever give you this sense of fulfillment. It only comes from the inside of you. And that leads me to my second point of what we have to dust off, and that is the wrong opinions that we have formed about ourselves. Let's just take a deep breath. This is such a key area when it comes to approval and affirmation and validation. A lot of us are walking around with inaccurate opinions of ourselves. Remember, self-esteem is simply the opinion you have about yourself. And depending on what that opinion about yourself is based in, you can literally be living a life of abundance or a life of lack, a life of joy or a life of sorrow, simply and merely based on the opinion that you have of yourself. So we have to dust those two things off of our conscious. We have to dust those things off of our emotional well-being and of our inner being itself, because those are the things that are standing in between the reality of who you are and who you are living as on this very day. Once again, we are speaking about validation. We're speaking right now about the things that we have to eradicate in our lives so that we can truly walk in this accuracy of who we are. And two of the things that we have to let go of, aka surrender, aka let go and grab on to something new, is one, the opinions of others. And I'm going to rest there because I truly believe that at some point in our lives, there is this transition between who we believe ourselves to be and then who we start to believe ourselves to be in the sight of other people. I've spoken about this a lot on LifeClub, where I've had this battle of being confident in myself, but when I'm in the room with other people, I start to feel as if two things. One thing, you can just feel something that isn't right. You can feel like people don't like you. You can feel like people don't appreciate you, and that be very far from the truth. And then on the other end, you can have people directly tell you they don't like you, or you do not add up to what it is that whatever creation in their mind or picture in their mind that they have of you. And when we deal with those things, we have to almost have this reality check on the inside of ourselves and understand that your opinion of me has nothing to do with me. Basically, your opinion of me, good, bad, or indifferent, has nothing to do with me. Again, your opinion is based on your perspective and your experiences and the things that you desire and your preferences. On the other hand, my opinion of me has everything to do with me. Therefore, again, you have to be mindful of compliments, and you have to be mindful of insults, and you have to live this life almost where nothing, good or bad, can impact and influence the perspective of yourself. Because just like a person on one day can praise you, they can ultimately turn against you within the same day. And we see it all of the time, especially in culture and entertainment, whether that be your last album or whether that be your behavior or whatever the case may be. So you have to be mindful of how you accept even compliments themselves. You have to understand that the opinions of you from others has absolutely nothing to do with you. That's why oftentimes you can see people in certain relationships and somebody can be really, really cruel to this person, yet that person can continue to love. And I'm not speaking about this ignorance of love that we often see where somebody is just being a doormat. But when you find in certain cases where somebody is genuinely and authentically loving another person despite of what that person is doing to them, you have to understand that that person's love towards that person who is not treating them so kindly has nothing to do with the person who's not treating them so kindly. It's a disposition. It is a choice. It is a decision that this person is making to love regardless of the hate or the pain that this person is causing them. And that's a really, really strong and bold thing to be able to do. It is truly a decision that we all must make in life. So again, when we go back to validation and when we find ourselves seeking validation from other people, we have to understand that the opinions of others has nothing to do with us. And when you find yourself in that space, you find yourself in a space of freedom and liberty, because it doesn't matter anymore whether I get a like. It doesn't matter anymore whether this person calls me or gives me praise or speaks against me. It really doesn't matter. And that, if anybody has ever experienced that truth and that space of living, you know exactly what I am speaking about. It takes a huge load off of your shoulders and frees you up to be your true and authentic self. And the other aspect that we have to dust off is the wrong opinions that we have of ourselves. And usually this negative opinion that we have of ourselves came from the outside. It came from somebody neglecting you. It came from somebody treating you inappropriately. It came from someone bullying you or teasing you or just basically putting you down. Those negative experiences can surely shape the way that you start to see yourself. The other aspect of how we see ourselves is this whole idea of the comparison theory. When we look at other people and how they're living their lives, or when we look at celebrities, or when we look outside of ourselves and see different people doing different things, and we start to play this comparison game, which is so dangerous, is dangerous again because it's a thirst that will never be quenched. You can never live the life of another person. So to measure yourself to another person is futile. It is truly, again, a sure way to stagnation and a sure way to sorrow and despair, because once again, everybody else's life has nothing to do with you. I feel like that is something that we all have to really register. Oftentimes we get caught up in the lives of other people that we miss what's going on in our lives. We miss the goodness that's going on in our lives. We miss the spaces that we need to heal in. We miss so much constantly looking outside of ourselves. selves. So when we come to this space of understanding the wrong opinions that we formed of ourselves over the course of time, and recognize like a lot of the thoughts that we have that have eventually become our beliefs have been sown and watered over time, years even, because you can have a thought, and if you just have that one thought and let it pass, it doesn't really take root. But a lot of the strongholds that we are experiencing is because of years of thinking them over and over and over again. Just like you learn your ABCs, you meditate on that sequence of letters, you say them, you sing them, you think about them, you write them until you know them by heart. And the same is true for our thoughts and our beliefs. The same is true for the perspectives that we have of ourselves. So one of the things that we have to be mindful of is that it is a process to dust these things off, to get rid of the things that have been, I guess, just sown into our hearts and sown into our minds. It is a process, but that process will never start if you do not decide to start it. So remember, when we speak about validation, we have to understand that we will never find peace and rest in the opinions of others. And we also have to recognize that when we have wrong thoughts towards ourselves from the experiences that we have had in the past, that is an area that we have to literally eradicate. And I'm super excited to be the one to share with you just how we eradicate that. So just to recap our first half, we are speaking about validation, aka the approval of a thing. I don't even want to consider it the approval from others. Just this concept itself of validation is showing proof of a thing's or a person's authenticity. And to be valid is to be strong, to be grounded, and to be aka a force, right? So one of the things that we spoke about was the things that we have to dust off of us. Remember, to discover something is to uncover it, is to unveil it. And oftentimes we are seeking validation from the outside of ourselves when in actuality it starts on the inside. So step one is to really get rid of this notion that our validation comes from the opinions of others. Secondly, we have to deal with the wrong opinions that we formed of ourselves over time, whether it's based on the opinions of others or the simple experiences that we have gone through. One of the other things that I want to make note of is the validation of culture and society in general. Oftentimes, it doesn't necessarily come from another person, but it just comes from the rules of this game that we play in culture and society. Oftentimes, we are looking for the blue check to validate us. We are looking for how many followers we have to validate us. We are looking at how many degrees or where we work or our job or who we're married to. We're looking at all of these things to deem us approved and authentic. And the reality of it is that if you are solely approved of the things in this world, you will fall once you do not have those things anymore. So you have to really understand, you know how something is like 100% genuine? Like you have to be that person. Like you have to have this truth, this authenticity, this transparency, and again, this knowing about who you are on the inside. So whether you have a lot or a little, you still know you are that person. Yes. So true validation is the approval of who you are. And the only way that you will find that validation is to be your authentic self. So now we're going to dig into some tips and tools on how to reach this fullness of validation. Remember, to be validated is to be approved as the real thing. So I always speak about our mind and the things that we have to do and the paradigm shifts that we have to experience in order to really see the reality of these truths. And we spoke about that when it came to dusting off the opinions of others and dusting off the wrong opinions we formed of ourselves and not comparing ourselves to society's standard of what approved is and what official is. And some ways to actually do that, start in our actions. Now, it could be a top-down or a bottom-up approach. I often speak about this power in renewing your mind and starting to shift your thoughts. A lot of people ask me, well, what is your New Year's resolution and all that good stuff? And if you know me, I live outside of time. So while I'm excited to see 2020, the plan remains the same, to move forward, to press forward to the mark, and to just continue to be consistent in the growth. But one of the paradigm shifts that I am focusing on, and I truly encourage everybody to not necessarily make a New Year's resolution, but to make some resolutions in your mind. Oftentimes, New Year resolutions consist of what you are doing versus what you're thinking. So when we speak about setting goals and we speak about moving forward into this new season, we have to acknowledge our thought process and our paradigm, because if you set a goal and you only do physical actions to obtain that goal, you will end up right back where you were if your mind has not changed, if your mind has not been renewed, because we truly behave how we see ourselves. So if you see yourself in a certain light, mentally, your actions will only take you but so far. So that is the, I believe, top-down approach when you start with your mind. And then like the bottom up for me is this creating actions and taking physical steps and putting in physical work to shift your mind. Whichever way you put it, you have to have and set this intention to renew your mind, to change your thoughts about a thing. So we can start with meditation. Now, meditation is simply to chew on a thing. It's to think it over and over. You don't necessarily have to be sitting down with your legs crossed and your palms open with your eyes closed, some incense and some music. That might sound nice, but this true art of meditation is simply what you are thinking about on a regular basis. So what is your mind's meditation? You can think of the meditation of your mind as this story. And each and every day you wake up to the reality of a story. And that story is the one that you are telling yourself over and over and over again. So start to unpack your paradigm, start to unpack your perspective. Now you can write it down and say, okay, here's my perspective on relationships. Here's my perspective on money. Here's my perspective on parenting and children. And the list can go on and on and on. But I encourage you to start to unpack the thing that you are meditating on. And you can really tap into that by catching yourself, by thinking about what you're thinking about. And oftentimes we don't necessarily realize what we're thinking about if we first aren't intentional about it. But the other aspect is we catch what we're thinking about in a moment of transition. And that transition can take place in your emotions. And usually that's where it is. It's like you can be really happy, and then out of nowhere, you start to feel sad. You start to feel down. And oftentimes it's like, well, why do I feel like this? And oftentimes it's your last thought. And sometimes those thoughts are subconscious. Sometimes they come up at a certain point of the day. It can be 12 o'clock, and every day around 12 o'clock, I start feeling some type of way. Start to take note of when your energy shifts, aka when you start to feel a shift in your emotions, that energy in motion. You have to understand that your body is telling you so much about your spirit, so much about your mind. I'm going to get a little personal. I talk a lot. And I ask a lot of questions. So when I went to my doctor, I started asking her a whole bunch of questions, and I got it out of her that literally your body is made to heal itself. You have everything you need to be totally healthy. And this is coming from a medical doctor. And the reality of it is that your mind has the ability to heal your emotions and to change and to shift and to truly be rewritten, truly be renewed. So we have to pay attention to our emotions, pay attention to what our emotions are telling us. And I do not suggest you be led by your emotions, but allow your emotions to do their job. And that is to reveal the thoughts that you are having. So start to unpack your mind's daily meditation. What are the things that you're thinking about? Do you have thoughts of love, life, and abundance? Or do you have thoughts of everything opposite of what I just said? And understand that you are playing out that reality every single day of your life. That's why when people speak about vision boards, no knock to the vision board planners and people, but I have life boards, and my life boards have mostly words on them. And those words mostly reflect how I want to feel on a regular basis. I want to feel healthy physically. I want to feel love in my heart. I want to have clarity in my mind. And literally every day I am able to look at those life boards, because in all actuality, you are living out your life, and everything that you want naturally is simply a part of your life. So when your spirit is aligned with your mind and your mind is aligned with your actions, you will truly have all of those gifts and those trips and those material blessings that you want. But understand that you will never appreciate those things, and you will never be fulfilled by those things unless you have your alignment with what's going on the inside of you. So be mindful of your meditation. Be mindful of the thoughts that you have running through the incubator of your brain every single day. Start to unpack those things by making a list of each perspective. It's great to start with those areas of mind, body, spirit, relationships, finances, all of those key areas that pretty much make up our lives, and write down what it is that you think about when it comes to those things. Write down the emotions that you have in those areas, and then whatever it is that needs to change, start to make that transition on replacing those thoughts with healthier and better ones. And once we move from this space of meditation, we go into acting on the truth. Again, whatever you think is your truth. And it sucks because some of us don't have healthy thoughts. But the reality of the matter is that whatever you think is your truth. It's not the truth, but it could be just your truth. So the key is to line up your truth with the truth. And once you do that, you start to act out on the truth. You start to position yourself and carry yourself in such a way that matches what it is that you believe about yourself. And this is that process of validation. This is that process of affirmation. This is that process of growing into the person, to the you that you believe is the real you. You have to understand that having alignment in your mind, your body, and in your spirit creates this thing we call life. And a lot of us are walking around out of our minds. We're just walking around so oblivious and unaware of what it is that we are meditating on a regular basis. So again, once you start to shift your meditation, you start to align your actions with that truth, with those new beliefs. You start to carry yourself in such a way that it aligns with what you think of yourself. Because believe it or not, you are carrying yourself like that anyway. I think it's just one thing to be aware and conscious of it. But in all reality, the way you act in front of your friends, the way you act at school, the way you act on your job, the way you act in your relationships is a reflection of what you are meditating on. So be mindful of that, and then start to act on these truths that you are starting to believe in. And again, if you see yourself as a business owner, you start to write your business plan. You start to create your website. You start to change your hashtags and your handles. You start to act according to what it is that you think of yourself. If you see yourself as healthy in your mind, you start to eat better. You start to work out. You start to walk, which is what I like to do because I really don't like working out. But you start to pair your actions to the thoughts and beliefs that you have about yourself. And then there is pressing forward, aka being consistent. Oftentimes we don't have to change anything. We just have to put pressure on and be consistent in the very things that we are already doing. And we cannot get weary in well doing, and we cannot faint, and we cannot give up. You have to understand that a drop of water can melt down a mountain if it is consistently dripping year after year after year after year. So be mindful of that. Oftentimes we start a thing, and when we don't see results immediately, we give up, or we say this thing isn't working. Or if we get resistance towards it, we stop and take that as a sign that this is not working. But for those of us who do go to the gym, we know that the more weight we put on ourselves, the stronger we become. So resistance is definitely part of this journey, but it's not a resistance to stop you. It's a resistance to strengthen you. And you have to start to discern what types of resistance you are experiencing, because oftentimes it's not this thing of giving up. It is just putting on more weight so that you can become stronger. So don't start to second guess yourself when you don't see a certain result immediately. Anybody who's ever lost a lot of weight can tell you that and attest to that. Like, look, I started out this weight, and the more I went to the gym, and the more I stayed consistent, and the more I ate better, and the more I slept better. And I'm learning that there is no substitute for sleep, but that is a whole nother conversation. But the more they started to do the thing that would get them the result, and the more patient they were, once they got there, they understand this whole idea of being consistent, persistent, and staying the course. Once again, the actions that we need to take on and embody and pursue in order to truly find this inner validation that we all genuinely have is to check and unpack our meditation. And doing this with a pen and a pad will surely bring you results, because I truly believe that the first manifestation of anything is to speak it and to write it. So when you write out and unpack your meditation in key areas of your life, be it relationships, be it finances, be it your body image, and the list can go on and on, start to write out what it is that you currently think towards that, the good, the bad, and yes, the ugly. And then start to replace those negative, unfavorable, unproductive thoughts with those thoughts that will truly reflect what it is, not only that you believe in your heart, but the things that you desire. And then as you do that, you start to connect your actions by walking in that truth physically. There's this thing, it's like faith without works is dead. And oftentimes people misconstrue that. In all reality, faith is this substance. It is a real thing. And when we start to unpack faith, we start to align our actions. And that is the work. Acting out on the faith that you have, acting out on the very thing that you believe in. That is the work. So we have to, once again, get into the habit and set the intention of aligning our actions with our meditation, with our thoughts, with our paradigm. But we cannot do that if we have toxic thoughts. So that's why it's so key for us to unpack our perspective and our paradigm. This feels so good. Yes. I hope you feel as good as I do. All right. And then the next step would be to press forward. Remain consistent. Remember, you cannot get weary in well doing. You have to stay the course. And once you start to see certain things move, both in the natural and in the spirit, it gives you a boost of confidence. But it also is what I call breadcrumbs, telling you that you are on the right path. Remember, resistance oftentimes is a force that's strengthening us. It's not telling us to stop. So one of the major things that I want to leave you with is believing yourself. A lot of us have betrayed our hearts and our minds so much by saying we're going to do something and we don't do it. So affirmations and speaking things over your life is not going to work if you don't believe the very words that you are saying. So we have to reconnect not only with ourselves, but with the life force, and be mindful of our words. Be mindful of the commitments that we're making. Being mindful of the things that we are saying, because some of us are literally betraying ourselves with our words. So when you say a thing, You need to show up with that thing. And it's not to say, because oftentimes people are like, well, I'm going to stop saying stuff because I don't know what I'm going to fulfill. No, in all reality, just be mindful of what you're saying. Be mindful of the promises that you're making. Be mindful of the commitments that you're making, not only to yourself, but to others. Because the more you start to say and do the things that you're saying, the more your heart can start to trust you. Selah, yes. The more you start to believe yourself, the more you start to believe your confessions, the more you start to believe yourself, so that when you do speak a thing over your life, you actually believe that thing. And this has so much to do, again, with the meditation of our hearts and us acting out on those truths and those beliefs, and then us being consistent with those beliefs. This feels so good. Yes. So now we spoke about truths, and I have to speak about life's truths towards us. We have to understand first the truth of worthiness. You are worthy. You have to understand that it took some real strategy to get you here on planet Earth. And when you realize the plan, and when you realize what it really took, however you came into this world, when you recognize that you are not a coincidence or a chance happening, like you were destined to be here. And I always say, if you haven't found your purpose and if you haven't found your talent, understand the very fact that you breathe out carbon dioxide and nature takes that in, and then in exchange, we get that oxygen. You are literally keeping the earth going. And that is enough to deem yourself worthy of being here. Secondly, you have to understand that you are accepted. And this, again, goes back to our paradigms, our self-esteem, aka the opinion that we have of ourselves. A lot of us need to just accept ourselves instead of trying to get everybody else to accept us. Third, you have to understand that you are called. And I'm still learning about this thing called calling. I truly believe it is embedded in the fact that your heart is connected to a thing. And that thing is calling you to carry it out. So discover that. And if you have, continue to unpack it, continue to develop it, and continue to discover it. And last but not least, you have been chosen. Yes. Remember, options are potentials and possibilities, but to be chosen is to be taken up, to be purchased, to be taken home, and to be used. And that in itself is a blessing. Oh, it feels so good to be here. I always feel so good. Anywho, I hope that this installment on validation has helped you in one way or another. We're going to just put those 3 dots there because LifeClub never, ever ends. Thank you so much for rocking with me on LifeClub with me, Tashima Jones. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you were here with me. And for that, I am truly, truly grateful. You can find me, all of my social media contact information, as well as life classes and joining LifeClub, all that good stuff on tashimajones.com. Remember your greatness. Talk soon.
I am Tashima Jones, and you've been listening to LifeClub. Thank you for tuning in.